suspects?" Ellen asked, apparently satisfied that her blouse was clean. Suspects? Suspects in what? I froze momentarily with my hand on the blind cord. Cape Bay had had an unsettling number of murders in the past few months, though otherwise crime was very low. Sure, there was some petty crime, especially during the summer. Teenagers stealing someone's beach umbrella by moving it 500 feet down the beach, teenagers shoplifting bags of chips from the local convenience store, teenagers getting caught drinking, basically a lot of teenagers getting up to no good. Other than that, Cape Bay was a safe place to live, the kind of place where people didn't lock their doors and kept their keys in their cars. Except for the murders. In the split second before the disheveled woman answered Ellen's question, I found myself hoping against hope that it wasn't another one of those, and that some teenager had gone a little overboard and decorated the boardwalk with some spray paint. Not as far as I know. I mean, it's only been a few hours. I saw on TV that if they don't find a suspect in the first 48 hours, it's unlikely that they'll find one at all. The woman who'd had the sun in her eyes said, "Well, it hasn't been 48 hours yet, has it, Diane?" Ellen snapped back at her. The two of them seemed to have some particular grudge against each other, the way they snipped at each other. I'd have to remember to ask Rhonda what their deal was. Diane ignored her. "Who found her?" My throat went dry as I hoped that the her in question was a car, not a woman. I made it a point to stay out of my customers' conversations unless invited, but in this case, I knew I had to butt in. "Found her?" My voice came out all hoarse and scratchy. Rhonda looked up at me and nodded slightly. I closed my eyes and wished this wasn't happening. "You hadn't heard?" Ellen asked. Before I could shake my head no, Diane spoke up. "Well, none of us had before Susan came in and told us, did we?" Ellen gave Diane a dirty look. "Who was it?" I asked. The million-dollar question. Everyone looked at the disheveled woman, who I now knew to be Susan. "Georgina." "Rockwell?" Susan nodded. I put my hand against the window frame to steady myself. Georgina Rockwell. She worked down the street at Howard Jewelers. I didn't know her well, but we'd chatted a few times, and the last time I'd seen her at the cafe, we'd talked about getting together sometime for drinks and to chat. That had been 2 days ago. "What happened?" Everyone looked at Susan again. She looked at her coffee and sighed. "There was a robbery at the jewelry store. Georgina got caught up in it somehow and—" She stopped and shook her head. I stared at her in shock. I didn't know what to say. A robbery at one of our little Cape Bay shops was horrifying enough, but one that ended in murder? It sent chills down my spine. "But what did they do to her?" Diane asked. "I mean, did they shoot her?" I couldn't quite blame her. I wanted to know too, but it seemed so crude to ask. The other women seemed to feel the same way, based on the mix of horror and intrigue on their faces. Susan shook her head. She leaned toward the rest of the women and dropped her voice down low enough so that anyone not at the table wouldn't be able to hear her. "They, used a brick to break the window. They threw it, and it hit her." She mimed something flying through the air and hitting her in the temple. I cringed at the thought. "When?" I asked. "When did it happen?" "Last night around 10, they said." 10? 10 p.m.? I couldn't believe I'd heard her right. Everything on Main Street closed by 9, especially at this time of year, when we hardly had a tourist outside of the weekends. In fact, I was pretty sure Howard Jewelers closed around 5 or 6. I wasn't really sure, but I knew the shop was dark when I closed up the cafe each night. Susan nodded. What was Georgina doing there at 10 o'clock at night? She shrugged. I can't imagine. Unless they were doing inventory or something, but then Dean would have been there, I don't know. "You never told us who found her." Apparently Diane used that same snippy tone of voice with everyone, not just Ellen. "Dean, the brick set off the alarm company called Dean, and when he got there, there she was." "Their alarm company doesn't call the police?" I asked. Ours did. Police first, me second. "I guess not." That seemed strange. The whole point of the alarm was to call the police. What was I going to do if the cafe was being broken into? Call the police, of course. For as much as I paid the alarm company every month, the least they could do was save me the trouble and call the authorities themselves. That way the police would get there faster, and I'd be spared the trauma of finding the body of one of my employees. I looked over at Sammy and imagined responding to a